I like to read, and I realized kind of in a dim sort of way when I was about 13 or 14, because I used to go to the library and just read like a maniac. And when you're 13, 14, 15 years old, you're hitting puberty, and that's when all these things really come up. And I knew something was a little different, and so I read about homosexuality. And intellectually, I kind of got it, but I had difficulty. I had no experience. And when I grew up and went to school, middle school and high school, in the Chicago suburbs in the late 60s. And kids would call each other fags or cocksuckers or something as pejoratives. But other than that, homosexuality didn't exist. No one ever talked about it. No one was out. I didn't know anyone who was gay, never heard of anyone who was gay. When the adults would tell you, when you're a kid, your parents would tell you don't take candy from strangers or don't get into a strange car. They would tell us that, but no one ever told us why. So I grew up in a vacuum as far as that was concerned. Although I did have my first real homosexual experience when I was 14 with another kid, who obviously he was also 14, but was way more experienced than I. And for several months, we had this really amazing time. I was completely innocent, didn't know anything. And then his family moved when I was 15. And then from 15 to like 22, I knew I was gay, but I didn't know any gay people. Even in college, people didn't. I was only 17 when I graduated from high school, and I was shipped off to college. And even though liberation had already happened, I think it was 1969 with Stonewall, and I was shipped off to college in 1970, but I was in Des Moines, Iowa. And it took a while for those parts of the country to catch up. So I was in college, and still, again, it was just like high school and middle school. Nobody was gay, supposedly. There were no gay people. No one admitted it. No one was out. I didn't even know if there were any gay bars in Des Moines. It was really, actually, super unhealthy with hindsight. There were. They still have something like underground papers now, what's the LA Weekly. Before the internet, there were a lot more of those kinds of newspapers and things, and they were really liberated, and really, it was all part of the countercultural and the hippie movement. Women's lib, gay lib, civil rights, all that stuff. And you could find bars. And so I literally, like for Chicago, I looked them up, and then I went all by myself. It was weird. I was completely naive. I didn't understand anything. I was at this bar and I met this kid, and we were talking and drinking beer, and this older guy, he was probably 25 or 26, came up, and he was tall, he was really good looking, really hunky, and he was wearing like jeans and a tight t-shirt and a leather jacket. And we were, at the time, we were smoking cigarettes and drinking beer to be cool. And the guy, all in the middle of our conversation, he shoved his cigarette lighter in and lit my cigarette. And I was so stupid, I didn't even understand that he was trying to hit on me. I was like, I wasn't very graceful about it. I mean, of course I wanted to meet people, but it was intimidating. And I didn't have any cues as to how to behave and how to approach people. So I had to just learn it all on my own. It was very painful and very stupid. When I moved to California, also innocently, the first job I got was at Studio One, which was the biggest gay disco on the West Coast. It was like Studio 54 in New York. And that was all gay all the time. And then I kind of trial by fire. I learned. I worked at the door, and I was a waiter. And Studio One was a trip. There was a lot of hanky-panky with management and the staff. They would kind of expect sexual favors. It was, and for me, really, I was so naive. I was always, I'd be shocked. There was an elevator at Studio One, and my boss, my direct boss, about 2 days after I started working there, we were going from the ground floor to the top floor. There were only 2 floors. It was like a freight elevator. It was supposed to be trendy and cool. And he said we were going to test it. So I walked in, and he pulls the thing, and we go up, and he stops it between floors, and he starts chasing me around, and he was really cute. And I ended up having sex with him outside of work. But I was completely unprepared for something like that. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know, it was like, what? You want to do what? Where? Now? And everyone's there. We're just between floors, and it was a cage elevator. It wasn't even very private. It was so stupid. Once I worked at Studio One, and once I was there for like 3 or 4 months, I got very hip to what was going on. Like I instantly recognized within a few months that the alley behind Circus of Books on Santa Monica Boulevard, the reason all those cars were driving around and around and around and the guys were walking up and down, I figured it out. It sounds stupid now, but if you're not looking for it, you won't see it. And I honestly didn't know. When I was really young, it was really easy to get picked up. It was effortless. But I've never really liked having anonymous sex. I always like to know the person I'm having sex with. I've had anonymous sex, and I certainly would meet people at bars and have sex with them. But I didn't like to go to the baths. And I'm not the kind of person that likes to get a blowjob in the bushes at Griffith Park. But I've been approached there. I discovered Griffith Park because I was hiking. And I had read a book when I was back in Chicago before I came here called City of Night by John Rishi. And it's a really famous underground book about gay life. And they mentioned Griffith Park. So I knew something was going on there, but I didn't know where it was or how it was happening. And then one day I stumbled on it. But by then I knew what was going on. And also, it doesn't take a genius. If you're walking down a path and there's some guy just randomly standing in the bushes for no other reason, it's like, oh, I think I know what that guy wants. So that